All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jessica Wolf, and I am the Urban Wildlife Coordinator for the Western region in Nevada. And then with me today, I have Jessica Height. She is going to be answering any questions that you might have. So today for you, we have the question and answer box open. If you just kind of scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A little box. You can put any questions that you have in there, and either Jess will answer it or we can get to them at the end. But today we are talking about Nevada Knockout, which is one of our distance learning programs, and we're going to be focusing on some colorful critters. So this is a Nevada Department of Wildlife Education program, so please keep all comments and questions PG rated. Make sure they're appropriate. If they aren't appropriate and you don't stop, we will kick you out. So please don't do that. Just keep everything happy and good, and we'll be all set. So this is a webinar. I can't see you or hear you, so our only interaction can be that question and answer box or the chat when we pull that up. So get comfy. So first, we're going to start off with a fun little poll. Have you ever heard of Nevada Knockout? So your poll should have popped up and you can answer on your screen. Awesome. Looks like we're getting some answers here. Give it a few more seconds. Perfect. So it looks like the majority of us haven't ever heard of it. So we'll go over what Nevada Knockout is, and some of us have heard of it, but we haven't participated quite yet. So we'll hopefully get you on board this year. So what is Nevada Knockout? Nevada Knockout is a distance learning program that the Department of Wildlife does, and it's a great way to encourage both students and adults to learn more about some Nevada wildlife. So it's much like March Madness, where it's a single elimination tournament. So we have a bracket that you fill out with all of your different matches, and you see if you can pick out who the winner might be. So here's a cute little picture of a coyote and a badger facing off. So how it kind of comes together is every year we get into a room, or if it's like this year, we get on Zoom and we rank all of the animals that are going to be in our knockout. And we rank them on their intelligence, their agility, their attack mechanisms, and their defense adaptations. And we do that for every single animal that we have in our program, and we kind of try and figure out which one would win should they be faced up to one another. So this year we have 4 different categories. The first one is Nevada Noggins. So those are going to be animals that have some sort of headgear on them, whether that be antlers or horns or beautiful little crests like our Steller's jay. Those are going to be all in the Nevada Noggins category. Next up, we have our colorful critters, which is what we will be talking about today. And those are all animals that are either brightly colored or colored in some sort of way that's maybe a little bit different than you might expect. Next, we have our cutie patooties, and these are our lovable animals. My favorite is the pika, if anyone was wondering. They are super, super cute, but those are all animals that people just see and they just automatically love because they are so cute. And then finally, we have our magnificent migrators, and those are all animals that take some sort of journey and migrate. So one of our examples is the monarch butterfly, which is a really big migrator. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about our colorful critters. So we have our Western Tanager, our Viceroy, our spotted bat, our vivid dancer Damselfly, the red fox, the Great Basin collared lizard, the Paiute sculpin, which I think could have also been in the cutie patooties category, and our Redband Trout. So we're going to do another poll. It's a quick one. And I want to know, why are animals colored the way that they are? And this is a multiple choice one, so it can be more than one answer. Awesome. So it looks like we've got some diverse answers. It looks like all of us agree that a lot of the reason is to look like the habitat that they live in. Some of us say maybe to attract mates. Others say to mimic other animals. No one says we don't know, but all of these answers are correct. Some cases we don't really know why an animal is colored the way that it is, but all of those answers are correct. It can be kind of any of them. So today we're going to go over the three main types: animals that are brightly colored, animals that mimic other animals, and then animals that use camouflage. So the first one we're going to talk about are brightly colored animals. So both males and females can be brightly colored in the animal kingdom, but a lot of times we see it in the males. And one of the main reasons for that is because it kind of shows off good genes. If you're super brightly colored like that Western Tanager and you're able to survive, you've probably got some pretty good genes, because there are lots of predators that might pick up on those bright colors and might like to eat you. There was a study done in 2005 that looked at house finches, and it kind of looked at how healthy those house finches were. So what they did is they took some males and they injected them with a bacterial infection. And what they found was that the males that had a brighter red head recovered more quickly than the ones that had a more pale yellow head. So it basically showed that those bright heads kind of indicate better fitness, and they are able to survive better. So the female house finches automatically kind of go towards the ones that have the brighter heads because they are more healthy. And it's an indication of that health. So here we have the Western Tanager, and the males and the females look different from one another. So the top one is a male Western Tanager, and then the bottom one is a female Western Tanager. And those male Western Tanagers are known for their bright red heads. And what's cool about that is they actually get their color from a pigment called rhodoxanthin. And that is a pretty rare pigment in the world. Most birds that have those bright red heads, they actually get their coloring from carotenoids, which are found in plants. But the rhodoxanthin, they think that the Western Tanager gets its color from the insects that it eats, not plants. They're found in a lot of different habitats, in forest habitats, but they really like Douglas firs, ponderosa pines, and lodgepole pines. So you can find them if you're in the Reno area, in the Galena forest during the summer months. They eat a variety of different foods, but typically during the summer they eat lots of insects. And then when those insects get a little bit more scarce, they will eat fruit, but they really do like their insects, like all that protein. And a fun fact about them is they'll actually clip the wings off of dragonflies before they eat them, so they kind of get rid of those wings. The longest living Western Tanager was actually tagged here in Nevada in like the 80s, and was then found about 6 years later up in Oregon. So they can have a pretty long lifespan. That's probably not the norm for most of them, but it's pretty cool that it was originally banded here in Nevada. They are not found here year-round. They're really only here for the breeding season. And down in southern Nevada, you'll find them through the migration time, but they're not really hanging out too much. But you can definitely find them during the summer here in northern Nevada and eastern Nevada. Next up, we have the wood duck. This is not a Nevada knockout, but I think it's an awesome example, and they're one of the coolest ducks, I think. So on this picture, we have a male wood duck and a female wood duck. The male wood duck is the one with the beautiful green head, looking very fashionable, and the female is a little bit more dull and drab. One of the reasons why females are more kind of dull and drab is they don't have to show off for a mate, right? And it's going to help them be able to raise their young without interference from a predator. Wood ducks are cool because they are cavity nesters, so they'll use old woodpecker holes or areas in rotted out trees and use that in order to have their brood. They're not going to hang out on the ground like maybe a mallard would. They'll actually go up into a tree and use those little cavities to put their eggs in. And they're also known for what's called egg dumping. So a female wood duck will find another female wood duck's nest, and they'll lay her eggs in that other female's nest and then make that other female wood duck actually raise her young for her. Pretty lazy, pretty smart. it's a really interesting adaptation that they have. Wood ducks are really not found all over Nevada. You can find them in some breeding spaces, that orange color right up at the top near Idaho. And then also here in the northwestern Nevada, you can find them. Some year-round, some just for non-breeding. They do out in Fallon. They actually will breed along the waterway, and we have some nests that we put up for them that they can use. Next up, we will talk about some imposters. So these are animals that mimic other animals. And they'll again do that for a couple different reasons, or in a couple different ways. They'll mimic them through behavior, through coloration or physical characteristics, or a little bit of both. So in Nevada Knockout, we have the Viceroy. Does this look like an animal that anyone has seen before? If you say a monarch, totally right. It looks really close to a monarch. But I have a trick to show you how to kind of tell them apart. You see this little line right there? Monarchs do not have that line, but the Viceroys do, to kind of tell them apart. I think monarchs are also a little bit larger, but if you're just looking at a butterfly, it's really hard to tell size-wise, so that little line is going to be your tip. Unlike monarch butterflies, the Viceroy uses poplars and willows to lay their eggs and have the caterpillars eat those plants, whereas a monarch is going to use milkweed. They really need milkweed in order to survive. And monarchs and Viceroys, they actually mimic one another. It's called Mullerian mimicry, and so they both look really similar and they both taste gross. So what that's going to tell a predator is when they see one of these bright orange and black butterflies, stay away. It's not going to be a delicious treat. It's going to probably taste really nasty. Maybe I should find something else. So they help each other out by mimicking one another. Next, we have the Gopher Snake, which again isn't in Nevada Knockout, but I had to give it a shout out because it's super cool. And they're really cool because they actually will mimic rattlesnakes. They'll mimic rattlesnakes via their coloration. If you look closely, you can kind of see the pattern and everything. It looks very much like a rattlesnake. But they also have a few behaviors that help keep them safe when they're trying to mimic a rattlesnake. First up, they don't have a rattle, but when they're feeling threatened, they'll swoosh their tail really roughly in some leaves or brush to kind of mimic a rattle so that it kind of tells a predator, hey, maybe don't come closer, don't eat me. I am going to bite you and it's not going to feel good, and maybe I'll have some venom like a rattlesnake would. But they'll also flatten out their heads. Rattlesnakes have really triangular shaped heads because they need a place to keep all those venom glands, right? So Gopher Snake will actually try and flatten out its head to look like a triangle, to look like a rattlesnake. So then something will take a second look and maybe not continue going after them, because gopher snakes are not venomous. They get their food through constriction. So when they find something to eat, they'll grab onto it, wrap around really tight until it dies, and then it'll consume it that way. Whereas a rattlesnake uses its fangs and its venom in order to get its food. And if you are hiking around and looking, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. I was on a hike with some kids and they were like, oh, a snake. And I come running over and look down, and it was a gopher snake, but its head was so flattened out and so triangular that I thought it was a rattlesnake for a second. So they're very sneaky little critters. And finally, we have our camouflage category of animals that use camouflage in order to survive. So they'll have camouflage for a couple different reasons. So the first one is to help them blend into their habitat, and that will help them to protect them from predators, but it also helps predators better sneak up on their prey because they're not as noticeable. So we have that adorable Paiute sculpin. They live on the rubble and gravel of riverways and water. They like really, really cold water. But if you look at this little fella, he's very speckly, right? He kind of looks like the bottom of a river. So he has really good camouflage that helps him to not only protect him from predators, but also to get his food, because Paiute sculpin, they are ambush predators. So they'll kind of hang out on the bottom, wait, and then at nighttime when they like to feed, They'll slurp up some insect larvae, some aquatic beetles, snails, algae, all that good stuff when they're hanging out there. But that camouflage also does really help them protect them from predators, because this is someone's finger. They are not very big fish, and there are lots of other bigger fish that I'm sure would love to eat a little sculpin. But they remind me of little lionfish. There's also the red fox, which we have in Nevada. This picture isn't a great example, but their coloring really does help blend them into trees and brush, especially when it's maybe a little less white on the ground, a little less snow. The red fox, they live in a lot of different habitats, anywhere from forests to deserts. They can kind of survive. And they're really good at living near humans. We consider them to be an urban animal. And one of the reasons why they're so good at living near humans is because they're omnivores. That means they eat both plants and animals. And they'll take advantage of just about anything. In our urban environments, we invite a lot of animals in, including the red fox, because we provide so many different food sources for them. Take a bird feeder. If you're feeding birds, you're not only feeding those birds that are hanging out in the trees and on the ground, you're also inviting things like little rodents into the area, as well as little animals other animals that might eat that seed, but you're also inviting all the animals that will eat those animals, which a red fox will definitely go after little birds and little rodents. They have that nice little thick floofy tail, and they use it for three main reasons. The first one is for balance. So just like a cat, like a mountain lion would use its tail when it's jumping up as an extra limb to help them balance, foxes will do the same thing. They'll also use it for warmth. It's super floofy, right? If they're cold, they'll just curl up, throw that tail on top of them, and it adds another layer of warmth for them. And they'll also use it for communication. Red foxes are in the canid family, so that is the family of dogs. And like our pets at home, our dogs at home, they use their tail to kind of communicate to one another. A fox will do the same thing. We have our second reptile of the day, and that is the Great Basin collared lizard. These can be found in rocky areas in deserts. And if you look at this one, maybe not on this particular rock, but if it was down in the gravel over here, it'd be really hard to spot, right? Pretty good camouflage when it's scurrying around on the ground. Like the red fox, they are omnivores, so they'll eat both plants and animals, but they mainly eat insects, smaller lizards, snakes, and rodents. It's kind of their main diet. They're most active during the day, so they'll be found basking on rocks. They are cold-blooded, so they need that heat in order to kind of get moving and going around. So they're typically found just kind of hanging out, basking on rocks, getting all that lovely desert heat. They aren't active during the fall or winter time. That's because it's just too cold. There's not enough warmth. So they'll be brumating, hiding out, sleeping the winter away, like some of us like to do. Unlike other species of lizards, like the western fence lizard, these species of lizards can't detach their tail. So a western fence lizard, if it is feeling very threatened, it's gonna detach its tail, and that tail is gonna keep moving so that it'll distract the predator while the western fence lizard gets away. Great Basin collared lizard can't do that, so they're gonna rely more on their camouflage and maybe their speed to get away from a predator. We have the Oreo bat, or the spotted bat as it's more commonly known. This is one of the 23 different species of bats we have in Nevada. We have 23 different species, and they're all microbats. So that means they're really, really tiny. And the spotted bat, they're known as a spotted bat because they have spots. Crazy, right? They'll have a spot on this shoulder, a spot on this shoulder, and a little spot on their bum. So they have three spots on their backs. They also have the largest ears in North American bat species. Look at those things. Those are huge, right? But those ears, they take up a lot of blood and they release a lot of heat. So when a bat is trying to stay warm and they're not using their ears, the spotted bats will actually curl them back and keep them really close to their body. And then when they're ready to use them, they'll pump blood back into them and make them big again. The spotted bats, they're pretty solitary, so they are not like some of our other species that we have in Nevada. For instance, the Mexican free-tailed bats, they live in these big colonies of maybe 10,000 bats, whereas a spotted bat, you're usually going to find them off on their own, being a little introvert, which I totally understand. They use echolocation to get their food. That's why they need those big ears. And basically what echolocation is they'll send out a little sound. Those sound waves will bounce back off of whatever it is in front of them, and they'll be able to catch, hopefully, some insects from those sound waves, and they have a better view of what's going on around in their nocturnal world. Spotted bats are pretty cool though, because they have one of the echolocations that humans can actually hear. Most bats we can't hear, but with spotted bats we actually can. They are relatively rare for us to find, and that's because they like to live by themselves. It's a lot easier to find 10,000 bats than just one bat. And they also like to live up in high cliff crevices, so a place where humans aren't necessarily going very often. So there's not a ton known about these bats, definitely ones that need a lot more research, but they're super cute, and who doesn't love an Oreo? Next up, we have the Redband Trout in our Nevada Knockout bracket. This is a subspecies of rainbow trout, but they have larger spots than a rainbow trout would. They get their name from their red band. Surprise, surprise. Sometimes we're not very ingenious when it comes to naming animals, but that red band along their lateral line, and that lateral line is kind of like their nice sensor area. They have lots of little nerves, and it helps them kind of feel out what's going on in the water. So that red band along that lateral line is how you kind of distinguish them. And they're, again, found in lots of different habitats, from rivers to lakes. You can find some redband trouts. And they'll eat insects and invertebrates and smaller fish, all that good stuff, whatever's kind of in their waterway. In Nevada, we don't really have a large habitat for them. They're really found up here along that Idaho border. And finally, we have the vivid dancer damselfly. This is Nevada's state insect. It was designated as Nevada state insect in 2009, I believe, by a group of students that picked it out because of its coloring. It reminded them of the Nevada state colors, so the silver of the wings and the blue of the body. Those are state colors. They're found throughout Nevada in lots of different aquatic habitats. And they're a lot smaller than a dragonfly would be. Dragonflies are pretty chunky. These ones are relatively small. They are predators. They will hunt for their food. So they have those big eyeballs, and those eyeballs can have like 30,000 lenses on them, and that's going to help them to find their food and stay away from predators. They also have little bristles on their legs, which will help them to like capture their food sources as well. Vivid dancer damselflies start off their life in the water, and they'll spend most of their life in the water, and they'll only be above water just for a little bit, really to make more damselflies. But they're kind of found in any kind of aquatic habitat all over the state of Nevada. If you see a beautiful little bouncing blue insect, it could be a vivid dancer damselfly. So in the chat, can you think of any other reasons why an animal might be colored a certain way? Anyone have any answers? Any other main reasons why you think an animal might be colored a certain way? For mating, definitely, yep. Our beautiful Western Tanagers, camouflage, perfect. Any other weird ones? Due to diet? Yeah, definitely. With our Western Tanagers, they get that beautiful bright red coloring because of all the insects that they like to eat, that rhodoxanthin pigment. Perfect. Awesome. And so it seems like we agree, mating, camouflage, typically the main reasons why an animal might be colored a certain way. Beautiful. So we're going to do one more poll of the day. Who would you pick to win this bracket? Got, again, the Western Tanager, the Viceroy, the Spotted Bat, Vivid Dancerfly, Damselfly, Red Fox, Western Great Basin Collared Lizard, Pite Sculpin, and Redband Trout. Ooh, we've got some favorites here. Got 82% of us saying Western Tanager, 18% saying Red Fox, and everyone else thinks that all the other candidates are not going to win it. Awesome. Gonna end that. So we think most of us think that the Western Tanager is going to take it and win. We'll have to see. So if you are interested in playing Nevada Knockout, you can go to our website, and if you click this link, we can send it out as well. You'll have a how to play, the brackets, the contenders, and also the battles. And today we actually released our first set of battles. So you can go there, read the stories, see who came out on top, see if the Western Tanager is moving on to the next round. And there's also a lot of information about the animals that we have in our knockout. And then one more poll. Sorry, I lied. We have one more. Do you plan on playing Nevada Knockout with us this year? Yes. Woo. Perfect. It sounds like some of us are a total yes, some of us maybe not this year, and some of us are a maybe. So we definitely hope that you come and you join us. Even if you don't fill out your bracket, it's definitely fun to play along and just kind of learn what animals are hanging out and which ones are winning. And with that, I want to encourage everyone to embrace the outdoors. It's beautiful out there, especially today. I was out there a little bit earlier. And we can do some questions right now, but before you log off, just make sure when you leave, there's going to be a survey. If you could fill that out, that would be awesome. We want to know how we're doing, what you'd like to see more of, if you're learning anything, if you're not learning anything, all that good stuff. So do we have any questions, Jess?
We have one question to clarify how you win the battles. Do you win just because you're pretty, or how would you win?
So we look at all of the animals. I'm going to go back to this slide. Sorry. Got to get through all of my animations. So we look at all the animals and we look at their intelligence, their agility, their attack mechanisms, and their defense adaptations. And we'll sit down and we take an hour or two and we battle it out between each other of this animal's smarter, or this one has better defense adaptations. And we actually have a rubric. I believe it should be on the website that you can kind of fill out for each animal if you'd like to. It'll give you kind of a better idea of how we kind of figure it out. But we take all of that into account to see who would win a battle. For instance, between the red spotted toad and the mountain quail, we look at both of those, we add up all their scores, and then we kind of decide who would win from there. We don't put any animals together to fight them. It's all based off of our scores that we come up for them.
Perfect, thank you. It's the only other question I haven't gotten to so far, so anybody out there, if you have any last minute questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A.
Yeah, and I will put up that last slide. It has my contact information, so if you don't think of anything right now, but something pops up in your head later on today, you can always shoot me over an email, and I'm always happy to chat.
All right, looks good. Well, we don't have any other questions, so I think we are all set. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday.